Along with size, verticality is one of the two things that the game tells you about when selecting a stage, so therefore it must be important, right? Correct. Verticality is also important to you with no stage being mentioned at all. This is due to the dash gauge system and how attacks interact with height. When you're in the air and you run out of dash, you simply fall directly to the ground, and then you have to walk around a bit to gain more dash. This brings back that 1 second of small amount of lag when you land, along with having to actually wait for that lag to end, then you regain your dash. Plus having to wait for your character to land. When you compare it to ground dashing, the difference is pretty obvious. You can see here that Cloud of Darkness just stops, and then regains its dash. There's not nearly enough time to punish it. At least, not as much as when you land from falling. And even at that, it only stops at one point, when it runs out of dash. It doesn't stop, slowly fall, and then stop again. So ideally, you want your feet on the ground where your enemy's feet are in the air, way above you, right? No, not exactly. That last statement is sort of true for dashing, so you can stop earlier and punish them as they fall down, even if you both run out of dash at the same time. But it doesn't apply to combat scenarios as well as it does to dashing. You saw how that ledge got in the way of Shantoto being hit by that virus? This is an example of a ground attack missing because you were on the ground, versus your enemy who had a height advantage over you. Now let's see what happens when you show it as a forward bravery attack in the air, which is a very similar attack even if it looks different. In terms of properties of the projectile itself, it's basically exactly the same. A perfect hit. This might seem a little odd to players who are not playing as marksmen because they don't have projectiles like marksmen do, and don't have the range that marksmen do in terms of projectiles. So let's do it again with a different kind of character. We'll be using Barts, because both of those unmastered neutrals are pretty tiny. As you can see here, his neutral misses Shantoto when he hits the wall. But when he only jumps and then does his neutral, he goes and hits Shantoto. So why does this happen? All Bartz did was jump and use his neutral. He didn't move forward at all with his control stick. Well, let's reverse the situation, where Shantoto is under Bartz. When doing a bravery attack, or most attacks for most characters, your character will actually move towards their target a little bit. This applies both in the air and on the ground. In the air, your character will actually move around a bit, going up and down, changing their elevation to actually reach their target if they're above or below them. It won't be much, but it does help in some situations, like we saw earlier. It's a lot less common for ground attacks, however, since they don't usually change the way they're angled to actually hit people above or below them. One example of this is Garland's forward bravery attack. Most Vanguards have a similar style attack where they'll thrust their weapon forward and then pull it back, and usually these attacks will actually change the elevation of the weapons being thrown. Maybe they'll throw a little bit more downwards or a little bit more upwards, depending on where the target is. It's a bit hard to see visually, but let me explain it in words for you. If Garland's forward bravery did not change height at all, it'd be going directly through the stairs right now, rather than trying to match the slope of them to hit Shantoto. You can use these kinds of attacks to catch people who think they're invincible, slightly hovering above the ground, completely off guard, by pulling them right back down and then hitting them away again, dealing a ton of bravery damage to these people. Of course, a quick hop will also neutralize the height difference and help you get to them faster, allowing you to land a neutral instead. All the more reason to learn most characters' movesets to figure out who can and who can't do this. Along with some attacks changing their angle, some attacks will change their properties outright due to a ledge being in the way. A prime example of this is Y'shtola's Blizzara ability, which if when you're near a ledge and you have nowhere else to move, the ability will actually spawn on top of the ledge in front of you, rather than in front of you on the floor, since there is no floor, it's just wall. You can use this unique property on some attacks to make places that are once thought to be safe completely unsafe, or to simply just trick people.
This isn't good. I don't give up.
Speaking of attacks affected by verticality, let's go over dunks. These are attacks that see you spiraling towards the ground incredibly fast, multiplying the damage of the attack depending on how high you are with your opponent if you land it while in the air. With the press of a single button, it allows you to reset your height almost instantly. Sure, there's more end lag rather than if you actually had landed normally, but you get down way faster and you can also guard cancel the end lag as well. It's also great for plummeting on the core, which is what a lot of players do to safely bash down the core. They fly above it and then use their dunk attack on it, then proceeding to bash on it with whatever best attack is to destroy the core in that character's arsenal. Some dunk attacks, like Jects, is an HP attack as well. A lot of players like to bring these attacks because they're great tools, and they do HP damage as well. They can also be wall rush comboed, meaning that they're pretty easy to land. The speed of the attack as well means that you can easily go above somebody and then punish them really fast with the dunk attack. Along with dunk attacks, there's two more types of attacks that actually ignore verticality almost completely. These are meteor and seek style of attacks. Seek is also known as spawn on target, which pretty much explains what Seek is. Meteors ignore verticality by spawning on top of the person and then raining down projectiles upon them. Essentially, they both counter the ability to go above you and then counter your attacks by being simply above you, making you miss. Seek HPs, on the other hand, spawn directly on top of the target rather than above them. Sometimes they visually can be seen flying at the target and then exploding or imploding depending on the attack. Most of the time they just appear on the opponent and then implode really fast. However, these can be pretty inconsistent due to a well-timed dodge or just simply some environment pushing you out of the way to make them completely whiff and miss. Some people have a harder time landing them compared to meteors as well. This is because they require accuracy and timing. Essentially, they both accomplish the same job. Seeks are just faster and harder to hit. So with all this information in mind, it's easy to see why jumps are so important in the game too. These allow you to get above opponents and then get away. It doesn't really require an in-depth tutorial like everything else has. Something I want to go over before we end this video is stages themselves. These stages in particular include Pandemonium, Interdimensional Rift, Midgar, the Royal City of Rabanastre, Stellar Fulcrum, Alexandria, Porta Desumana, and Orban Monastery. These stages have structures you can climb up upon, and while it's more necessary in Interdimensional Rift and in Midgar, it's more of a passive thought in the other stages. It's important to know where and when you can wall run on these stages, because they allow you to get out of jail free essentially. Let's say you get hit against a wall. As soon as your character is back in your control, you can just immediately run up the wall with no warning at all, and then get away from the enemies before they make you fall. You can also use these walls semi-offensively as marksmen, allowing you to get up high and rain projectiles down upon your opponents. Any role can use walls, so it's important to actually use them in practice so that when a sticky situation comes, you don't panic, run up the wall, maybe fall down by shielding or something, or just fail to run up the wall appropriately by mashing R1 in circle. So let's go over each stage specifically. For Alexandria, basically the entire arena is wall climbable, from the buildings around the arena, the gates, and the little tents and everywhere as well. Rabanastre has these two buildings mirrored across from each other on the southern side of the map. You can't climb up the gates between them, but you can climb up the buildings themselves. Along with that, you can climb up the little ledges next to the stairs, the sides of the stairs themselves, and the bells holding the flags. Orban Monastery has the wooden structures surrounding the monastery itself. In the back of the monastery, there's one part of it that has a roof that's slanted. You can wall run up that part. The actual roof itself cannot be wall runned, but the area above it, the wall in front of it, can be as well. Along with that, there's the bridge, the wooden supports along the bridge, and small cliffs by both of the pools in the level that can be wall runned. Midgar is more of an opposite question. What can't you climb? Well, you can't climb structures that have been destroyed, obviously, because they're no longer in the battlefield, they're just rubble at that point. You also can't climb up these 4 tiny little square platforms, or these, like, pipe structures. You'll notice these, like, gray pipes clumped together at multiple parts of the level. You can't climb up them for some reason. Finally, the Interdimensional Rift is full of these little ledges you can climb up on. The reason why we talk about these stages first is because these stages are the ones that aren't affected by the stage transition at all. Final Fantasy's 2 Pandemonium is covered in weird live-like walls that are like goopy and making noise. Disgusting. Also, there's pillars you can climb up, along with the walls. After the stage transition, however, the walls become much shorter, and most of them disappear outright. As a result, you'll get much less height from the walls. This stage's transition can also be triggered by summoning. Stellar Fulcrum suffers from the same problem, where after the transition, the walls become much shorter. However, it's not nearly as drastic, and the walls can still be used as a means of escape. The transition can be triggered by a summon, but what's even crazier is that someone can break the bridges connecting the gates to the main central platform in the Stellar Fulcrum. Finally, in Porta Desumana, there are 4 pillars surrounding the arena. After transition, which happens after 1 kill or summoning, 3 of these pillars are destroyed. Only one of them will remain intact. The 3 destroyed pillars, however, are virtually identical to each other, using the exact same model. The only different one is the one that's still intact. And with those last stage-specific notes, you're free to go and free of my grasp and free of my clutches or whatever. Thanks for listening to this 10-minute ramble about how verticality affects the game. Use it to get better at the game. See you guys next time. Bye-bye.
efforts were commendable.